Season 2, Episode 11.
I'm James.
And I'm Pat.
And this is UX Podcast, balancing business, technology, people and society since 2011. And with listeners new and old, all over the world, from the Netherlands to Malaysia.
Carol Smith is a senior research scientist in human-machine interaction in the Software Engineering Institute's AI division at Carnegie Mellon University. And she leads the Trust Lab team, conducting research to make trustworthy, human-centered, and responsible AI systems.
In her role, Carol contributes to research and development focused on improving user experiences and interactions with AI systems, robotics, and other complex and emerging technologies.
And today's interview with Carol was recorded just after she held a workshop on creating trustworthy AI at UXLX, which is a conference that is held every May in Lisbon, Portugal.
Tickets are on sale now and sell out every year. Get yours at ux-lx.com.
Carol, you run a workshop called Trustworthy Systems, and it's all about finding a way, as I understand it, of making systems tell you when you aren't supposed to trust them, so that we can make better decisions about when to trust the systems and when to act with the help of it, and ensure that we are doing the best possible thing that creates the best possible outcome for ourselves. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, very much. Yeah, and really just trying to help people in the field of user experience to ask the right questions and to be critical of the work that they're doing so that they're making the best system that they can for the people who either are using the system or who will be affected by the system.
And I think in your workshop there are some examples you use from self-driving cars. I think that's a great metaphor for this, because then you can talk about the car doing things and you're wondering, should I act or should the car be acting?
Yeah, and particularly because people are a little bit familiar with those now, and have at least an understanding that the system is having or supposed to be within the lanes and follow the indicators and lights and whatever it is encountering, but also realizing that there clearly are some limitations to the system. So it's a nice way to talk about complex systems because there are a lot of sensors. There's a very physical interaction between the driver and the vehicle if they are needing to take over, and the vehicle itself can be seen to be operating versus in a computing system, an AI system, you can't see as clearly what is happening.
Exactly.
So there's two aspects to that, isn't there? That you've got building up a trust and I suppose establishing that you can trust the thing. But then there's the communication of how trustworthy. Thinking about your car example there. I mean, my car it can do the thing where it stays in lane and it can steer a little bit for me. It's not self-driving, but it does beeps and things at various points. And I've understood that is some kind of indication of lack of capability or a warning. But I don't really know what it's trying to say to me.
Right.
So I don't know how it's communicating, and I don't know. That then feeds into my trust of it, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a big challenge with those vehicles as well as with other types of complex technologies is how does it convey that things aren't within its typical capabilities, that the situation has changed, that the context has changed, and then how is it changing or turn-taking with you as the driver or the operator or even at a computer terminal or with a sound speaker, with any of these systems, how to communicate that is really complex. It's really hard. They're hard problems to solve. And audio signals in a car work fine if you don't have the stereo on, but if you're listening to loud music, are you even going to hear that little chirp or whatever it is? And if there's no other indicator, how would you know that something has changed or that it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Yeah. Especially if it's an indicator that needs to be responded to on the first occasion.
Right.
So the time to learn isn't there for you. You can't go, oh, right, it was that. Next time I know.
Yeah.
There's some situations where, no, now.
Yeah, it's an urgent situation, and the systems don't do a good job, at least the ones I've seen, in conveying that very well, the urgency and the importance of something versus the windshield wiper fluid's low. Like they're all kind of a similar level.
Or the oil lamp comes on, which really means stop the car. Right, and even that indication, like how I've never driven this car before, if it's a rental and that light comes on, how important is it for this car versus the car I normally drive? Exactly.
And those kinds of contexts are never there in a vehicle to begin with. Like, especially for a new driver who doesn't know, they can easily destroy their vehicle and not realize, the oil indicator went on. I figured I'd fill up when I got back.
Even though I don't have a self-driving car, nobody does, I have cruise control. And sometimes when it's raining really hard or when it's snowing, I get extremely worried that this is going to get an indication of there's an obstacle in the way and start braking.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to feel comfortable that it's working. Will it tell me there's a problem here? It has never told me, so I don't dare use it. How much can these systems tell us, really?
Yeah, and that's there's the end where people understand that there probably are significant limitations, but it's not clear where it is. And then on the other end, there are people who are over trusting and use it all the time because they don't feel safe driving in snow, so they're using the semi-autonomous vehicle in the snow because they think it's better than they are when it's not. And in between is all the gray. And even vehicles that are purportedly self-driving are really just a compilation of some of these services we were talking about, lane keeping and the ability to do that, the braking, the automatic braking during the cruise control. Those are really all that the vehicles out there can do. It's just a compilation of those things. So this isn't really high tech in the sense that the system really is driving, is using these various types of technologies to drive, but it's not doing it in a way that should be trusted.
Exactly. Oh, that scares me so much.
Yeah.
I suppose moving that example on then to other areas, how do you, because surfacing trust, a level of trust, or explaining why you should be trusted in a vehicle is one thing, but thinking about some of the other AI-driven systems, what opportunities do these systems have to build trust there?
Yeah, and it's very dependent on the situation, the context, the people who are using the system. But typically, if the system is providing the right kind of evidence of how it's making decisions, how it's making recommendations, if it is a situation where the people understand the capabilities of that system in that particular context and also know what the edges are, it can't handle this type of situation or it will perform poorly in this type of situation, then they can begin to build what is called calibrated trust. So where they aren't over trusting the system, they aren't under trusting the system, they know its capabilities, they have evidence that makes them feel that it is a trustworthy system, and so they're able to use it in a way that is productive and helpful in whatever tasks they're trying to do.
I'm immediately thinking of healthcare situations because there are so many levels of trust, because it's not just the trust with the machine, it's also trust with the people you are working with, and then you have also to trust their level of competence in interpreting what the machine is saying. So that is a great example of the trust situation is something that we can relate to because it appears in so many different situations. It's just not human-machine, it's human-to-human, of course, as well. So does that mean that once a system has done the wrong thing a lot of times, you won't trust it anymore? In healthcare especially, I've seen this in so many systems, the staff stops trusting the system.
Right.
What can they do?
Yeah, and once trust is diminished or gone, it's extremely difficult to build it back, particularly in a higher risk, where the situation is it has higher stakes. It becomes very difficult for people to regain their trust and for the system to to provide enough information and evidence, whatever it is, to be able to overcome that. So it's really difficult, and that's why it's important to build it right the first time, and do it in a way that the system will provide information, and also that, again, there are safeguards in place, so it will, perhaps it is able to be turned off if it's not performing as expected, or it's able to revert to a previous version, that sort of thing. So having those kinds of safeguards in place is really important as well.
Yeah, because there you're talking about, like, you're building edges and safeguards in at the start, whereas what we've experienced with some of these, especially the large language model tools that we're seeing at the moment, there feels like they're relying on feedback, the kind of rate my query, rate my response kind of thing at the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, that surely means that you're opening yourself up to a certain amount of damage. There's collateral damage in that approach.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the beta testing that's happening with regular humans on a day-to-day basis is becoming a big problem. These systems are being released without proper testing, without any safeguards in many cases, or they have very limited safeguards. So there was an individual that released a video just in the past couple weeks where they were able to do a workaround and tell ChatGPT, I believe that was the one they were using, that it was actually this alter ego, and so then the system was responding as ChatGPT and its relatively narrow constraints, and then as this alter ego with just out of the just wild answers, and that was not hard. That took 2 minutes to get that system to do something that was not intended and that supposedly was prevented.
Yeah. And it seems like ChatGPT is like the perfect example of how not to build it, because it's not telling you what to expect. It's not teaching you. It's not putting any constraints on your expectations, because people are assuming a lot, and there's a ton of overtrust in that system.
Very much, and it's not, and there are various flavors, but for the most part, most of those systems are not indicating when information has been completely fabricated and when it's actually from a good resource. Some of them will provide references, but not necessarily, paragraph by paragraph or even sentence by sentence. And so there is false information being portrayed as the same level of quality as information that is factual, which is leading to a lot of issues because it's very well formed. They're good sentences. They're grammatically correct. They read well. And so people are easily misled into thinking that the system is accurate and informative.
So are we heading to a situation where we always need a minimum of two systems? The actual, I'm going to say AI for the sake of simplicity, that's generating these responses or these decisions with sources or without, and then a control system or safety system that's on top helping us assess them.
Yeah, some people are trying to do that. I think for some use cases that might make sense, but I do think that humans have to be part of that. We can't just have one system judging the other system because they both could be completely wrong and just, sure, everything's good. And so we really do need subject matter experts doing that, if it's in a particular area, or people who are just doing overall maintenance monitoring of the systems, as well as doing regular audits of the system. So there's a lot of layers of oversight that are needed, but also potentially some use of other systems that they're doing more programmatic monitoring in that way.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll get OpenAI to do the right thing anytime soon. But as a designer listening to this podcast, realizing that it's so easy to get things wrong, how should I be working?
Yeah. So do you think part of it is really asking those tough questions, like thinking about what is the goal? That shouldn't be that tough, but what is the goal? Who are the users? What are the most obvious inherent risks in the system? And there are a number of different activities you can do to help those come out if you're not sure right away, and then really working to make sure that you're preventing harms that you do identify, and planning for mitigation for things that you either can't prevent or that that may come up. So what happens when the system does begin to fabricate information? How are we going to manage that? How is the system shut off? How is the system reverted to a previous version? Like just planning all of that out, and also how to communicate that to the people who are affected by the system being offline or unavailable or whatever it is, and just accepting the fact that it's a complex system. It is not going to be working the way you want it to all the time because of the way that these systems work. They are dynamic, and there will be a situation where the data, it's called drift, when it's just not doing what it was doing. It has found a new pattern. It is identified information that you didn't want it to. It's not identifying the information you did want it to now, so you need to do something to fix it.
Yeah.
And just accepting that as part of these systems. They're not the old CDs that we used to get in the mail, and it was stable or not, but it was what it was. These systems change, and they're not going to be the same from day to day, and so that's why the oversight is so important.
And the realization that you can do something if you really want to.
Yes.
I mean, it's not impossible.
Right. And it's not inevitable that harm will occur.
Yeah.
If you do the right work up front, and if you put the right safeguards in place and have the humans monitoring, et cetera, nothing is inevitable. We design everything around us. We make these choices, and we can make the choices to make sure that we keep people safe and that the systems aren't able to do unintended things.
And just then we're using language like the right thing, oversight, safety, and things. Who decides what's safe? Who decides what's good oversight and what's right?
Yeah.
'Cause, we need to know what's wrong, and
Right.
that means then core values.
Yeah, and these are really difficult questions, and ones that do need to be made at a relatively local level, because what is right culturally and otherwise for one group of people is not going to be the same for another, and even within context that can be very different. So in one situation, you may, when the system is unsure about a response, you may want to know that and know about how confident the system is, et cetera, whereas in another system, if it's not at a certain level of confidence and that's confirmed, you may not want to see anything other than things that it's very confident in, so even those kinds of choices, much less the ethical and other choices that are really going to vary in different ways. So even the question of privacy, very different in Europe for the most part, and the U.S. They're very different ideas of what that is and what should be protected. And so the systems need the appropriate regulations and oversight and that sort of thing for those audiences. It gets complex, though, when the systems are being used internationally to begin with.
Right.
I was just going to ask if we've got global systems.
Yes.
Can they deal with that kind of locality? I mean, saying, okay, I'm one system, but I know that's Europe, and I know that's the US, and I know that's China.
Yeah, people are trying to do that, but that's so difficult. It's building things to do everything is always problematic. So,
And defining the boundaries there sounds really like a big.
You want
task.
to grow. You want to grow globally and internationally. But that, from a healthcare perspective, I've seen so many enterprise systems that try to accommodate so many different countries' healthcare systems. It just does not work.
Exactly. Yeah, it usually isn't going to work. And the other thing is, I don't necessarily want another country's ethics, morals, et cetera, put onto me, and vice versa. I don't think anybody wants the U.S. idea of things right now. So, there's no one's going to have the right answer that we all adopt. It does need to be, these systems need to be created for the purposes that they're made and for the people that they're made for.
And related to that, I think one thing that you articulate really well is that it's not possible to build a system that harms no one.
Right.
And if you can acknowledge that and feel it really, truly, and be honest about it and transparent about it, then you can tell people this is what it does, and these are the decisions we made, and then you can assume responsibility for them.
Right. Yeah, because we want to build systems that we're willing to be responsible for. Yeah, and part of that really is acknowledging the fact that the choices that we make are going to affect people, and thinking about that and making sure that we're making those decisions based on the information that we have. Nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not. So these systems can't be, because we're the ones making them. So we just need to acknowledge those issues and move forward with that. What Dwayne Degler calls humble design, really being thoughtful about all of the implications potentially.
So effectively, we shouldn't really be embarking on anything until we've at least found some area of harm.
Yeah,
because it always exists. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, much like in usability testing, if you conduct a usability study and there's nothing wrong, something's wrong. And similarly, if you're doing a harms analysis or another activity to identify issues, you'll find something. You should find something. A successful activity like that, you are going to uncover. They may be unlikely, they may be very
minor,
edge, but they may be very important and urgent things to make sure that you address. Yeah.
It doesn't mean to say. I mean, it's not always guaranteed that people are going to die because we're designed to mean they're. Yeah, that's got scale as well. What kind of
and there was a super interesting conversation that we had at the very end of your workshop related to. Is it possible to inform people about harm in such a way that they are harmed because they feel more worried? Right.
Yeah, creating anxiety, creating distrust inadvertently because of oversharing. Yeah, and there's definitely a balance there. There's been a lot of interesting studies recently looking at transparency and explanations for these systems. And I don't agree with the findings of some of the studies, but it's been interesting to see that in some cases there have been studies where people have trusted the system less because it showed them more information. What it was showing them, I have questions about anyway. But if you design these systems for the audience in the appropriate way, it should build trust for them. The system should be showing it's trustworthy. It should not diminish that in simple explanations and in transparency.
Exactly.
So I think about reputation as well, of course.
Yeah.
Which is a loose cannon in respect that the reputation isn't connected directly to the solution we put in place. It's an organic thing that moves between humans.
Yeah. And similarly with like in healthcare, if one individual isn't using the system and they tell somebody else, that system, I don't trust anything it does, all of a sudden that system has lost another potential user.
The collapse of reputation, and then it spreads.
Yeah.
It's a great metaphor. I feel calmed by the fact that we are having these conversations more and more.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. When people lately have been asking me questions about ChatGPT and these other large language models that never have asked me anything in my career about what I do, and that's really exciting because they're more aware both of the risks and the benefits, but also they're starting to question because they're seeing things in the news, on TV, et cetera.
And testing themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and realizing that, this isn't as good as they advertise, which is important. I think there's great potential for these systems. I wouldn't work in AI if I didn't think it was really potentially going to help humanity. But we have to do it carefully and consciously make choices to make the systems helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carol, for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And record. So the thing is, I was listening back to this episode as I was driving in my car, and I'd forgotten about how much we talked about cars in the beginning. And it made me think about all the different lights and switches and messages on my car, and it felt like I was questioning why I was trusting it at all. Why was I trusting it? Because everything felt really dangerous.
Well, I think for me, I wasn't driving when I was listening to the episode, but I did think when you mentioned the oil lamp example, and does it mean the same thing for all cars? I was just reflecting about that. I mean, what that oil lamp in a modern car probably is trying to say is you should probably book a time at a garage within the next so many 100 kilometers that you use your car.
Right. But in my car
I guess.
15, 20 years ago, it meant stop the car because your engine can break down.
Yeah, and modern cars now, they've got computers inside them, and presumably there's a guardrail further down the line from that lamp that actually does put the car into shutdown.
I would hope so.
It would,
but I don't know.
It would just stop your car. No, we don't know. And yeah, if you're going back to the old behavior of that lamp was a critical lamp, and you should stop and do something about it. Whereas now it's probably, you should think about booking some time in at a garage so they can look at it and log into the computer inside your car and work out what it's actually really saying, because they don't surface that information in your places that you can access.
But this is super interesting because it means that the things I'm used to because I'm older change meaning over time because the actual software applications or physical objects change.
Yeah, but I think we see this in so many different contexts where you have error messages, which are warnings. That lamp is a form of error message, isn't it? And it doesn't really give you trustworthy advice on what this means for you and what you should do and what happens if you don't do that.
Well, it really means you should read the manual now.
But you don't read the manual.
I know, exactly.
So, we know that, and it's like you don't change the defaults. I mean, there's certain things we know as designers that happen. So, I think another example is it's not completely unusual that you're buying something or paying for something, and you get to that point where it says, "Do not reload this page." Payment processing or whatever. Yeah, and you sit on that page, and nothing happens. It's just still there. And it says, do not reload this page. Yeah. Usually it doesn't actually tell you what happens if you do reload it. But, all of us have probably sat on one of those pages forever.
Yeah.
As in, you've waited. And what happens is you notice that you've received the email.
That's what I was going to say. I go to the email and see if it's come in. Yeah.
Yep. And then you know that clearly the message is now untrustworthy. You don't need to listen to it anymore. Do not reload this page is irrelevant now because you've got the confirmation that it went through. Broken.
Very broken. So what you were saying right there now is now this message isn't trustworthy anymore. And as I was listening back, I was also thinking about, well, how do we spend time communicating don't trust this? Because that is essentially what we're saying with a lot of the new types of generative AI tools, general purpose tools, in that they can do some things well, but some other things really badly. And people aren't always aware of what the constraints are. What's the framework for usage here? So how do we communicate, don't trust this? You're going down the wrong path now. You're using it for stuff that it really shouldn't be used for.
You've really good point. And the whole thing with safeguards or guardrails. I think it was this last week. There's been an example of the Arc browser.
Yeah, a new web browser.
I know about.
Yeah,
I know about Arc browser because you've shared it with me and said it's really interesting because it has a number of AI-based features and it's trying to kind of like reimagine how we use search.
I can give you an example of a really neat AI feature on it in that when I download PDF files from the internet, sometimes they have really weird names like just numbers and random letters. But the browser renames that for me to something coherent based on the content of the PDF file. So that's helpful for me to find the PDF as I'm going back to it.
Yeah, and what's really interesting and relevant to our conversation with Carol is that it's come to light that Arc Browser released their new AI search supported feature
just the other day.
But without any guardrails. They'd done the mistake that Carol was talking about. That they'd pushed it out there without anything protecting you, helping you keep on track. So it was possible. It's still possible. I'm not sure they fixed it completely yet. That you could do searches for like how to make a bomb, and it would give you examples about how to do this, rather than kind of like maybe steer you somewhere else.
Exactly. So the feature that they built is that it will go out and search for you and find tabs for you. So if you're looking for hotels in a certain city, you can say, find the hotels that have rooms available, and it will just list those tabs for you, so you don't have to go to your own search engine and put control, click, and open several tabs. It just does it for you. And it also summarizes and says, this hotel has these rooms available. It's located here and there. So it actually adds content and context to the page. And so if you have that search for how do you build a bomb, it will tell you in a very friendly voice, this is how you go about it. This is where you can go to buy stuff to build your bomb. It has no guardrails whatsoever.
No, the example in the article I read about it even said you could say, how do I dispose of a body? Yeah. I mean, there was these kind of searches, and
it gave you locations.
I give you real practical examples of what you could do, and the article I read gave examples of how Google, which has been doing search and putting guardrails in place for decades, how they, if you did certain types of searches, they put up a message that helps steer you in a better direction, maybe a helpline number, so on, or down prioritizes certain resources and uplifts other resources that maybe, again, push you in a better direction. Yep, this gets us into the values aspect and cultural and what is good and bad and so on. But aside from that, having a guardrail-free system like Arc put out there at first, where you could search for, there was no limit on what you could ask the AI to search for, and it would summarize and give you back. Absolutely boundless. That was a bit irresponsible.
And that connects back to what Carol was saying about, if you turn out to be not trusted, if you do something wrong, and this Arc is a relatively new company that has been lauded for the many good features that they have. Now they've done this, and it will be interesting then to see, well, how much trust has been lost, and how will they now communicate based on what's been revealed about how they release this feature.
I think it's an excellent reminder about how, a lot of this AI stuff is just putting us back to square one, like we were 20 odd years ago in the early days of interactive websites, where you could put star into a search box and you get entire databases thrown back at you, or you can put snippets of code into search boxes or whatever, and you would get
common fields,
get into back-end systems. Yeah, you would get back into back-end systems and so on. There was some simple hacks you could do, and we're there again.
Yeah,
but with AI-based systems,
because now people can just hack the AIs.
Yeah, you can trick them into spitting things out, just like we could trick search boxes before to in the early days to spit things out that weren't meant to be spat out.
Oof. Where do we go with this? I mean, that's not a.
But we can fix it through. Well, but we can fix a lot of this through what Carol has talked to us about, through what we're talking about being considerate, thinking, asking yourself these questions and
assuming responsibility,
preparing for the worst. Yeah, preparing for the worst as such. Presume that your system will go wrong,
and will
just like
harm
Carol
someone.
said. Yeah, and this is a great step forward to help us put us back on track.
Yeah.
Get us off square one again, square zero.
Yeah, that is really a timeless interview with Carol, so I'm happy that I listened back to it now, and I'll probably listen to it again in the future as well.
Recommended listening.
Right.
Now,
so you usually pick something out for us, don't you, James?
I have picked something out for us, and it seemed really quite applicable to suggest that you listen back to episode 270 from season 1, which was Design for Safety with Eva Pentimuk.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I love her work. Love her work on abuse online, how to deal with it. How to make sure you design to make it create less abuse online. I mean, it's a fascinating episode.
Yeah, and safety in systems.
Yeah.
So very relevant and connected to what we're talking about in this episode. If you want me and Per as part of your next conference, event, or in-house training, we're offering workshops, talks, and courses to inspire and help you grow as individuals, teams, and organizations. Get in touch by emailing hey@uxpodcast.com.
Remember to keep moving.
See you on the other side.
So, James, how many ears does Captain Kirk have?
I don't know, Per. How many ears does Captain Kirk have?
3. The left ear, the right ear, and the final front ear.